Hey, it's CF Tracking here with a couple of things I'm going to talk about today. One is I'm going to give you a little known facts video, just random tidbits of device tracking, device testing, and just details you may have missed on a collection of other devices, just as a pure benefit across the board, across a bunch of different devices. But secondly, on an upcoming video, I'm going to ask for your help. I just need some advice with setting up some sort of possible changes to the approach I'm taking, or just to the name of the website or the name of the YouTube channel. It's right now CF Tracking. So the first tidbit is, and I'm going to go through just a laundry list of odd ones, so apologize, but this is a little known fact. So the Garmin Night, so if you think of the transflective market, so the transflective screen market, a broad array of devices now are using transflective screens, which are very visible in sunlight. So they're all on average about 30 lumens if you take like the midpoint of the main watches. The single brightest backlight is the Garmin 945, which comes in at 148 lumens. So it's about, 5 times brighter than the average of the others. You take the other, second brightest, which is sort of odd, more bright than the Fenix 6 at 100% is the Stratus 3. So I'm still mid-review of the Stratus 3, and I'm gonna give you some high tech right now. So this is the breakdown of the brightness of the different watches on the market today. Hopefully you can see that. So the lowest, the Polar Vantage V, Coros Apex Pro, second lowest, Verdix. So both of those have fixed backlights, can't adjust those. The 245 come in a little better. The Grit X came out better than the Vantage V at the lowest end of the spectrum. The Baro 9 coming in at that midpoint, and then the Garmin 6S as well as the 6 standard coming in a lot higher. That's jacked up to 100%, obviously. The Ignite and Unite using sort of a quasi AMOLED screen at 69, and then the 6X at 70, the Stratus 3 at 72, and then the Garmin 945 at 148. So those are the brightnesses if you wanted to sort of get a gauge. Obviously, the AMOLED screens are way off the charts for brightness. So that helps define just the broad spectrum of watches and their brightness, because you can sort of see there's a spectrum. The Verdix at a higher end, sort of more expensive watch, is actually at the lowest end of the spectrum, or one of the lower watches as far as brightness or control of brightness. Little known fact is that the 945 is actually the lightest, most complete for the amount of features and benefits it has. So it's only coming in at 50 grams versus the average highest or heaviest watch, not counting the 6X. The 6X is sort of its own unique beast on the Garmin Fenix 6X. The Fenix 6 Standard Series at 83 grams. So it's a pretty significant jump there from almost the same feature set, minus a couple of things. So there's the overall brightness. Little known fact, the Polar Grit X is the chunkiest of the midline watches with sort of baseline or sort of lower level, maybe-ish specs. And the only one, the one that has 1.2 inch screen. It's got a 15.7, almost 16 millimeter thickness, and it's 47 millimeters wide, but still using a 1.2 inch screen. The cheapest feature set found on a watch is the one I'm reviewing currently with the Amazfit Stratus 3. It's got full running analytics and burst beat analytics. It's got training effect. It doesn't have anaerobic versus aerobic, just has training effect, which is the aerobic calculation, recovery time, load tracking. But then I did just realize it has performance metrics while you're running. So I wore the 945 and the Stratus 3 on a run yesterday, just a 10-minute run. And at the 5-minute point, both of them beeped and gave me the same performance condition change. So some sort of running thing that after 5 minutes, are you getting better or more optimal in your running or not? They both beeped with the same number of +2 at the 5-minute point. The 945 is $600. The Stratus 3 is $200. So that review is not quite done, but I'm still working on it. Like I said, the Garmin 6 regular series is the heaviest of its kind. Sorry, I got to get a notification driving me crazy. Little known fact, Polar has a glitch, and it's a positive one for the end user, in how they provide higher level analysis. So if you own or have owned in the past a watch at the Ignite level or higher, so that basically just means not the Polar Unite, But the Ignite or higher, so that means the Vantage V, the Vantage M, the Grit X. Not sure what other past longer term, the 800, the 400, 430, the 270. I'm not sure if those necessarily fall in. But if you have a watch, basically, when you have it linked to your account, Polar Flow will give you all the analytics because you're the owner of a higher level watch. So what I've been doing is just using a chest strap synced with Polar Beat. And then when the Polar Beat workout is complete, and then you go and open Polar Flow, it'll give you the full analytics. So I don't actually have to use a watch or own a watch to get the load tracking and cardio analysis, the cardio load score, as well as the load over time score for the workouts that I'm getting. And the odd thing is, as well, is that when you use Polar Beat and you track off a chest strap, the Polar Flow workout analysis will give you a recovery time that if you were using a Vantage V and just had it on the watch and then you dump the data from the Vantage V into Polar Flow, you wouldn't get recovery time. The recovery time hasn't been a great analytical help for working out because I don't feel like it's usually way on the low end of the spectrum, but it's still a stat that you get. So you sync a H10, with the Polar Beat, and then you save it in Polar Beat, and then you open up Polar Flow, and the universe, the internet talks to each other, and it dumps it back into Polar Flow, and you get all the analytics that you get. That's what I've found. I mean, you have to test it for yourself, but it's versus Garmin. If you're not using a watch, if you track a workout, and obviously you can't direct connect with the heart chest strap. If you're not using a watch that has the higher end analytics, you won't get the higher end analytics in your workouts. Back to some more oddball tidbits. The largest mainline screen or screen across the board is the 6X, the Garmin 6X, and actually the Suunto 9. Both of them have a 1.4 inch screen. If you compare that just by size, that's 35% bigger than the mainline 1.2 inch that a lot of watches use. 35% is a lot of screen space, and the 9 doesn't have great qualities. They're actually, Suunto's coming out of the gate with some big updates with things, but the quality of the screen and the colorization is not great. But on the 6X, it is great. So you got a big, huge, beautiful watch. So if you got a bigger arm or okay with a bigger watch, it gives you a lot more surface area for actual screen usage rather than just having a big watch. Little known fact, the Garmin body battery can detect onset sickness. So if you have a sickness like a heavy cold or a flu coming on, you will absolutely see it in the body battery if you've been wearing it for more than a week or two. It'll start to have high level stress or noticeable stress. Secondly, an oddball, I've come across a couple of studies where it'll actually show alcohol in your system. So if you have like 6+ drinks in a night before midnight, it'll actually carry your stress until 5 or 6 in the morning. So basically, even if you're in a dead sleep, your stress level is going to be about 20% higher and your body battery will not generate until about 5 or 6 the next morning. So it'll show when the alcohol sort of seeps out of your system. That's pretty cool. Onset sickness, when your alcohol's out of your system. Little known fact, the worst backlight experience currently has been the Polar Vantage and Grit series. When you think of the average brightness on a backlight for a watch is in, let's say, a 30 lumens, the wrist raised gesture backlight for the Polar Grit X, Polar Vantage V, and Polar Vantage M is a little bit less than 1. So you're thinking just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, just ultra dim. Worst wrist raised backlight. And then just a couple of minor tidbits. Fastest recharge, and I know that's an oddball thing, but it's useful in life, is the Coros family, the Apex Pro and the Vertix, but mostly I would just say the Vertix, that's what I tested last because it's got the longest battery, and I'll get into that in a second, but the fastest recharge from 0 to 100% recharge, I think it was about 1 hour and 10 minutes. If you compare that to the typical time, 1 3/4 hours to 2 hours for a full recharge 0, it's about 30% faster than anybody else on the block. And I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they do this. And it's the longest life. Now, I had about 12 days of battery life versus the 45 on the Vertix. Now, that's just, I don't know. I turned everything on, obviously, at all times and checked SpO2, and I just was testing a bunch of different features of it. So I got about 12 days. The average amongst most watches, even including the Garmin series, which are rated at 14, is about 6.5 days. So it's nearly 2 times longer life than the average watch, and like 60 to 70% of the recharge time. And then last but not least is lesser known premium features. So obviously the Vertix has all the premium features, but one thing that nobody in the titanium bezel world is doing is putting a titanium back. So the Coros Vertix has actually a titanium back and a titanium bezel, and then obviously has the sapphire glass. A little known feature is that the Coros Apex Pro actually has sapphire glass on it. So it's a little bit more expensive in the range of prices, but it's got sapphire glass, super nice feature set. And then last is the Stratos 3 actually has a ceramic bezel, and ceramic obviously from the previous renditions from Galaxy watches and Apple watches was a super expensive high-end thing. I don't know if it adds any value, but it is just sort of an oddball feature. So that's it. In the next day or two, I'm gonna come out with just a help request video. So I wanted to provide some sort of immediate value across an oddball spectrum of things I've seen and collected over time. Thanks so much for watching. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing. I'm trying to build a subscriber base, and more to come. Thanks.